Welcome to Unleashed, where MMA icon and power wrestling titan Dan the Beast Severn and Eric Carroll deliver a knockout punch of raw, unfiltered talk. Unleashed. Gear up. Gear up. It's beast mode.
Understand that, and I understand what Frank went through, and I understand what everybody goes through, because you're pushed out there in the mass of people. And as I said, and that's like Frank would always say, he just wanted to give everybody the best night of their life, because he knows how, you just said it, how ordinary people feel. It's something that's different. It's something that's unusual, and they go to these events, and I don't know, and they buy everything, so they're the best fans, that you could ever imagine.
I'm curious about that, Barbara. So it's been almost 40 years, or 36 years.
36 years in July.
Frank Goodish was murdered there in Puerto Rico, and you're still doing these fan fests everywhere and got these people that are just coming up to you and telling you about these memories they have of Frank and everything. What does that mean for you to be invited to these and to hear these good memories of Frank?
It's absolutely unbelievable, because I was the homebody. I've only seen a few matches live that he told me, a few of the important matches. Probably could count them on one hand, how many live matches that I saw. I was home looking after the house, looking after the child, and keeping everything running there. So when I go to these fan fests, and these I'm going to call them kids, because they'll come up and they'll tell me about Frank, and I ask them their age, and they weren't even born when Frank left us, because of YouTube, because of this, documentaries that are out there. I wrote a book, and they'll tell me all these things, even though they weren't alive. And it's so amazing. And the most amazing thing is when they show me tattoos. They have tattoos of him on their body. And it's like, oh, look at this. Look at my back. Look at my leg. I mean, these are tattoos. These are permanent, huge, big tattoos. And a lot of them are pretty good too. But these are the young fans that weren't even, you see, I think what's happened, let's face it, go back to the old school wrestling, how it was back in the day when we had everybody that was out there, the old school, they had stories.
Right.
They made a story. I call it like a nighttime soap opera.
I always say that, I don't mean to interrupt you, Barbara, but before this device came along, the cell phone, because with the cell phone came all of these text messages, but now I could take a quick picture. I could take a quick video, and I just on my own personal note, even though I was a much more modern day professional wrestler than what your husband was, I was always referred to as a throwback from days gone by. I would have loved to have been involved in the territorial days, where you might be in the East or the West or the Midwest, the North, the South. You may be in that territory for a year or two, and then that, okay, this coming weekend, it's that loser leaves town match that's going to be taking place, because you're at the end of your run, right? And it's time to head to greener pastures. And this device, it's like, people, they'll watch it tonight and they're like going, gosh, I just seen you do the exact same match yesterday. You can't do that now. It's like the proverbial cat been let out here now. I mean, it's crazy.
Yeah, it's whole change. So these people that, like you said, they go back to the old matches that people now are putting on, and it's incredible. I mean, the way that they talk about it, I saw that, like, I should say that even though I only saw 5 live matches, Frank would, especially when he was in Japan, Frank would come back from Japan, and he would get the tapes from the Japanese before he left. and he would sit there and he would critique his matches, because Japan was a whole different ball game than what it is over here in the States too, back in those days. I mean, you worked. They put you to work over there. You know, things that they never even seen in, in the States, because it was a different type wrestling. And he'd sit there and I'd hear him talking himself, dang, I could have done that better. Now let's see, now this should work. So he used wrestling as a business. He was not Bruiser Brody. He was only Bruiser Brody on the road when he was working, like a businessman. When he was home, he was Frank Goodish. But Frank Goodish treated it as a business, which was learning. As sometimes in life, you can learn every day, you can learn something.
Yes.
So, and I can remember that he'd sit. So going through, like serving dinner and going through that, I would see some of the matches and he'd call me and say, come here. Okay, what? Look at this. What do you think? Do you think I could have done better? Because I was the mark.
Well, good, but you look at it through a fresh set of eyes for him. That's
yes, because I would be the person that would be out there in the audience, and I'd say, well, yeah, that worked, because that got me. I kind of felt, whoa, okay.
I'm curious, Barbara, what was it that drew Frank to wanting to be into pro wrestling in the first place? Can you remember the first time he brought it up to you?
Yeah, well, what it was, he was a football, college football player, I think it was Iowa State, West Texas State, whereas you might not know, but a lot of the wrestlers have come from West Texas State. The Funks, Manny Fernandez, I could go on and on, Stan Hansen. I mean, these are all West Texas State. After he got picked up, he went up as high as, he did get drafted to the Washington Redskins, but he got red flagged. He always said then, I thought I was invincible, getting up to, here you are, I'm in the Washington Redskins, professional of the NFL. But I didn't put my mind to it, because I thought there was better. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You sometimes get to the point you think you're too good. And he realized, and there's another thing. So when he went into wrestling, he put his mind to it. He knew he wasn't going to not succeed again. He'd already failed because he didn't put his mind to it. But then when he got cut by the NFL, he went, because he was a head journalism major, and he went to, I forget, it was somewhere, he did sports writing for quite some time. I know he worked for the San Antonio Express News, and there was another, and I can't remember, somewhere up north, Texas. This is both in Texas. So he was a sports writer. Then he went he was thinking maybe I will be a policeman. He was trying to think of what to do. The sports writer was okay. He went to the gym. I think if I remember, he went to the gym because he always worked out. He went to the gym, and I think he met Scott. Oh, what was that? Putski,
okay.
Yeah, he met him at the gym. And I think that's how the very beginning, when he got into wrestling, because I think then he got introduced to Fritz. And of course, the rest is history, because he worked in that office for such a long, long time with Fritz. And I think that's how it all started. Then he went to Bill Watts, and then he went to Sam Muchnick, and he went to the different territories. But no, it was just a chance encounter in a gym that got him introduced into the wrestling. And like I said, I'm not to change the subject, I did go to see the Iron Claw movie.
Yes. I wanted to talk to you about that. What did you think?
I think it was a documentary and it was a movie. I mean, I think the casting, I think the guy that played Kevin was totally like Kerry. He was
yes.
He was Kerry. That was the one little thing, because you look at him, he even kind of looked at Kerry. His body was like Kerry's, whereas the one Kerry was kind of a little smaller. But the people that get onto me, because Frank was in there too. They had to put Frank in there, except he was one of the shortest guys. Everybody tells me, because they did a lot of the wrestlers, because Frank was so much part of
World
the
class.
Von Erich dynasty.
Yep.
And we went through all the tragedies that happened, because that's when Frank was working. He was a booker for a while. So living those tragedies and then seeing them, they didn't focus too much on the tragedies. It was, but that's like anything, any TV show, any documentary, there's always a little bit. But I think they did a pretty good job.
Well, correct me if I'm wrong. Frank is the one that found David Von Erich dead there in Japan, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I happened to go to New Zealand. I was in New Zealand. Jeff was just little, and he called me. Well, Frank, if you ever know anything about Frank, he was very frugal. He was frugal.
So is
When I
Dan.
got, yeah,
oh, I can't believe you said that to me, Eric. Oh my gosh, you're getting about as bad as Don Fry here now. No,
So one of the stories that I remember, and I was 4 when Frank died, just to note, but I went back and I learned about him because of World Class. And I remember Playboy Gary Hart talking about Frank, and he said he kept cans of tuna with him. And he said when he saw that, he knew he was going to make it in the business.
Yeah. I had to make sure the cans of tuna and cans of green beans in his bag every time he left. At home, his breakfast was spam and eggs was his breakfast. But to go back to that, when yes, it was Frank that found, because they
David.
were on David. They were on. Were in Japan, and they'd sent Frank up to the room because they're waiting for David on the bus, and that was what happened. I mean, I know it affected a lot of people. I know it affected Frank, because it was like, oh my gosh, and that's why he called me, because he was so upset. Just the fact of so yes, he did discover he was the one that went up there, which was the tragedies that happened. And I'm glad to see that Kevin is back in Bernie, Texas, as that's where we lived to. We lived in Bernie, Texas, and now Kevin is back with the whole family in Bernie, Texas. So I think if I ever go there, I'd like to see, because sometimes Kevin will say that Frank was like a big brother to them.
Yeah.
He was, he kind of looked after them. He was kind of,
Barbara, now that you've brought up the movie, one of the things that I saw, and I don't know, I'm just a fan looking from the outside, but knowing that Fritz was the one that trained Frank, what did you think about the portrayal of Fritz in the movie?
I think that was probably a pretty good job. What do you think?
Do you think so?
I think it was. I mean, I think it was toned down, but I think, yeah,
It had to be hard for those boys. Definitely had to be hard for those boys growing up, in that area. I mean, they were basically like rock stars.
Oh, I know. Yeah, it was hard. And, Fritz wanted a dynasty, and he wanted all the boys to wrestle. And I think, a couple of them probably would have kind of liked to do something else, that's what kids are. Every kid goes through, what they would want to do, but they kind of had to, go into wrestling. And that's what, so, it's kind of.
I got you.
Yeah.
I'm just curious, what kind of person was Frank behind the scenes?
Where? My dog is barking now. He must have heard somebody.
I know. I think must have heard mine.
Yeah. What? Say that question again. He was just.
I said, what kind of person was Frank behind the scenes? We saw who he was on the screen as Bruiser Brody, but what was it like living at home with him?
Well, put it like this. I would drop him off at the airport, and he was husband, father, Frank Goodish. I would see him go through the airport, and immediately he would turn into Bruiser Brody. The walk was different.
You got to turn on the demeanor, yes.
Yeah, the meter. He was Bruiser Brody. He was in the public. He was Bruiser Brody. The family was at home. He had his business to take care of. Then when he came back, it was exactly the same thing. I'd see him come to the airport. Then as soon as he went through the doors, he became Frank Goodish, husband, father. So he knew, and I think that's maybe why people still remember. I don't know, he knew how to distinguish the two. Because let's face it, in the public eye, some people become who they create, and they lose sight of who they are inside and who they are as as a person. But he never did. He always knew the difference between Bruiser Brody and Frank Goodish.
Yeah.
And maybe, as I said, to me, 36 years later, that I'm still going to these events, I'm still talking to you guys about this man who has not been around for this amount of time. It's really, it's an honor. I mean, it's amazing, because he always used to say, I want to give the fans the best night of their life, something that they can remember. I guess he did, to be still remembered, this long afterwards.
Well, especially with all the social medias, like what you were saying earlier, because of all the social medias that we have the capability to doing Zoom calls, video chats, audio, video playing. There's so many great tools that are at our disposal that lives are being recreated. You can relive these fond memories. You could take those old 8mm.
The old VHS.
Yes, tape stuff like that, and watch stuff. A lot of young people, they're going to say, "What's a VHS tape?" Or what's 8mm? What's 16mm? I mean, because they didn't see old reels that they used to play and when you was in school, that type of stuff. So
I know
when you watch a film or something like that. So no, I think it's a great tool to have to get to refresh people as to who somebody was. Well, the fact that there's a book that is out there as well. So I mean, there's just other tools that everyone somehow leaves their mark in this world. Good, bad, or different. We all leave our mark in this world. You just hopefully you left it in some type of a positive light is what you're looking for.
I know. As you said, the unpositive thing was, how it happened and everything. That was the negative. The positive is who he was as a person.
Yeah.
I definitely want to get back to talking more about Frank, but I'm just curious from your perspective. What was it like being married to a wrestler that was on the road all the time? And I'm sure that had its challenges as well.
Well, I met him in Australia. I met him. I was working in Australia at the time in just a little old hotel. And it just so happened, excuse me, that all the wrestlers would stay in this hotel. I mean, there was J.J. Dillon, Don Morocco, Rick Martel, Killer Cal Cropper. He's already passed. And I could go on, but, these are the names that are, No. So it just so happened that I got caught. I was there. And see, you're going back before cell phones again. Remember?
Right.
Cell phones. It was very expensive to make a telephone call between countries. So the wives or girlfriends would write letters to the guys because they were over there for quite some time, months sometimes. And so sometimes I'd give them the mail. I'd happen to be down there and I'd give them their mail and they'd talk and they'd show me photographs and the kids and the wives, because it's lonely when you're in a different country and you're away from your family, you're away from everything you know. It can be a very lonely, experience. So me and Killer Cal Crop had kind of got a friendship. He called me Big Sister. He's like a big brother. And this day, Frank had come in. Frank had come in. So I had known Frank. This had gone on for weeks. Just talking. You know what I mean? Just helping. And then this one night they talked me into, somebody didn't show up. So I had to do the 3 to 11, I was always just a daytime. So I said, oh, well, extra money. You're young, extra money. And just so happened I was leaving at 11 o'clock and the boys were coming back from a show in Sydney. And they said, look, my boss was a Texas gentleman. It was called the Texas Tavern. Then he owned a place called the Bourbon and Beef up the road. So they said to me, well, come on, why don't you come up and have a drink with us? You're just finishing work. Well, okay. safe. I knew them all by now. I wasn't, worried. And I went up. There was like about 12 of us. I mean, oh yeah. We also had our Andre the Giant was over there for quite some time. I mean, that was a story in itself. And good story. And went up to the Bourbon and Beef, the piano bar. All of a sudden, one by one, they would get up and leave. Oh, we'll be back. We'll be back. We'll be back. Then there was three of us there. There was Carl, there was Frank, and there was me. And then Carl gets up and leaves. Well, I should have known he was a good worker. He had got all the guys because he didn't know how to get to talk to me a one-on-one. So he'd said, you guys, I got work.
Oh, that's fantastic.
I got work. So what he knew that Carl and I, we talked, and he knew me and that. He said, look, if we get all the guys together and we'll all ask her to come up. She might not come if I just ask her, myself. So we all go up there, and then guys just leave, So, and just make sure that at the end that it's just her and me. So
yeah, make yourself scarce.
Make yourself scarce.
Nice.
So that's kind of how we first, and we just talked and talked and talked. And like he was over there he'd come back probably 7-8 months altogether. He went back for Christmas. He was there a few months, then he went back over here to Christmas to do some work. And then this was in 1977, I think it was. Oh, it's hard when you go back on time and it's like, where has it gone? So it had to be 1977 because I came over here in 78. So yeah, it would have been 77. Then he came back in 78. And then when he got ready to come back to the States, if you know anything about Frank, he kind of was a little bit of a rebel. So
I've heard.
Yeah, but all it was he stood up for what's right.
Right.
That was all it is. And sometimes when you stand up to people for what's right, they don't like it, because they think they're right. Frank knew the business. He knew what would work. He knew what would sell. He knew what would make all the guys money. So I guess he had a little confrontation with the promoter in Australia. So he came back this one night and he said, I'm leaving. I'm going back home tomorrow. Oh, okay. Nice to know you. Very pleasant. He said, and then he got paid cash. So he put this wad of cash on the table and he said, well, I'd like you to come over. That was all he said. It wasn't no promises. Anything. It was nothing. I'd like you to come over. Okay. See, he didn't have to say anything because I knew he trusted me, because anybody could have taken that money and kept it, and he wouldn't have been able to do anything. He was in another country and everything. But he knew putting that money on that table, that he knew me enough and trusted me, and that meant a lot to me, that he knew. So I'd been in Australia over 10 years, so I had to clean up like 10 years of my life, get places and getting things and jobs and things. So I think it was like 2 weeks later I ended up coming back over here. And what I thought, because you never know in life, so I had a ticket to San Antonio and then from San Antonio to England. So I figured, because you got to have a ticket to get in, you got to have a ticket out. So I figured out, well, if it doesn't work out, I've always wanted to go to England. Here's an opportunity. Didn't. It worked out, so I still haven't been to England.
Yeah,
that's great.
But he would often say, because when I got here, he said, the life is not going to be easy. I'm going to be working a lot. You're going to be by yourself a lot. But then he did say too, he said, well, I heard him tell somebody that. He said, well, I had to go around the world to meet somebody that would put up with me, or put up with my lifestyle. And that's how it worked. He did his job. And when I think about it, we probably only saw each other all together probably about 3 months a year. was all the time we probably got to spend together because he was on the road.
Yeah.
So,
Again, that was your relationship was all during that territorial time period, and yeah, he would be gone for great lengths, and you didn't have, again, we didn't have that cell phone or all these other things or devices or the laptops.
No, so there was no communication, and he wouldn't call, maybe once, a couple of times a year. It's money. Hey, it's too much money to make a call. You're fine. I mean, if I had to get in touch with him, I know I could have got in touch with him and everything, but no, I just looked after everything and did everything, and and that's what you do. That's what a woman does for their husbands, is they make it easy. You want to make it easy, especially, as you know, Dan, when you're on the road and there's so much going on, and you can't get home all the time. You have to miss out on different things sometimes too.
You miss out on so many birthdays, anniversaries, graduations, because all normal activities happen on the weekends.
Yes.
And when is wrestling all taking place? On the weekends. I always tell them that I have 7 other brothers and sisters. I'm second on the totem pole. So I always tell people that there's graduations, anniversaries, weddings, you name the occasion. I've missed it because they're all celebrated on the weekends, and I was typically gone on the weekend. So,
I know. Christmas Day. I always remember Christmas Day. Would sometimes go to a little hotel, or I'd cook a little meal before taking them to the airport. And then me and Jeff would go to the movies and would spend the day doing something. But Dad was gone, Yeah. We never really spent. He would often try to get home at least a couple of days before Christmas, so he and Jeff could decorate the tree. It was usually before. It wasn't on the actual days. You had to make time on different days and make that the special time.
Yes.
I think the funniest thing with Jeff took his dad to show and tell at school.
What was that experience like?
Yeah, and here with the teachers, because a lot of people didn't know who Frank was, because we were way out in the country on 5 acres, so we were pretty, you know what I mean? There wasn't a lot. When he got home, he just wanted to
stay.
Chill.
He wanted to stay home.
Chill, yeah.
Yes. Didn't want to go anywhere in town, stuff like that. I can relate to all this. I actually want to hear this story, because I'll follow back up with the exact same story, because I was show and tell too. But please continue.
Yeah, because everybody just freaked out. Here he comes, and so a lot of people did know, because he worked the he worked San Antonio with Joe Blanchard. That's not Tully's the son, and he walks in, and here he walks in with his dad, and it was just like, oh my, and he tried to sit in one of those little chairs.
Yeah.
But the way that it worked out is they just loved it. I mean, the teachers just loved it. The kids just loved it, because as you know, you are a personality. You are in the public eye. To have someone like that routine coming into your school with your son for show and tell. I think that was one of the nicest, biggest things that that Jeff had, because he didn't have his dad very often.
Yeah, again, that would have been a really special day. And kind of the same way with this exact same story happened to my son. I think was probably, 3rd grade, something like that. And he and a couple other boys were just having. One of the boys brought in some type of I think it was a Professionals magazine. Is what they're doing, and they're just flipping page by page, like ooh and like that, and then they flip the page, and my son just goes, "That's my dad."
Oh,
and then the other kids are looking at him, and even the teacher was there, and my son's name was Michael, and the teacher pats my son on the back and goes, "Oh, sure, Michael, that's your father," and so he ended up bringing me on in right there, and it was great to be there. And then I just answered different questions that the kids would have about this, that, and it was a wonderful day, and really made it was a great day for my son.
Exactly. That's exactly, because, as I said, they don't get to be around Dad a lot when Dad was working a lot. So
and when you're working, you don't want to bring that home with you. It's kind of like going, you want that to be left outside of your home. You want that's it's like you're the Cape Crusader, and you want that to be left out there. And when you come home, you just want to let your hair down at that point in time and be the father to the husband of. Yes.
Right. They had their own special things when Dad was home, and the one thing was, after that, and I think was after he had done that, there was a few years later when, Jeff was only 7, when his dad passed. But the teachers, it was in the school holidays too, because it was July. But what the teachers did, they put him with his best friends, because he was going up a grade and that. So they made it really good for him, made it really nice when he went back to school after, everything had happened. He had his 2 best friends in his class with him, which really, really helped. Because sometimes when you're school, you go in and you change classes, and sometimes there's different people in the class and everything. So I think that was really helpful for him to have his best friends with him that year, but, life happens.
Barbara, you talk about Frank being a rebel. I've heard many people talk about this, in which Dan, and pretty much every pro wrestler I've ever talked about, talks about the crazy world of professional wrestling and the business deals that happen. It sounds like Frank was just making sure that these promoters knew not to cross the guy, because so many promoters did back in the day.
Oh, yes. I said, and they know. That's why when they got Frank in, they knew what to expect after a while. And it's like you said, I know how this works. I know how to put fans in the building.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And that was all. I said, I'm not trying to do anything. I want to make money for everybody. I want to make money for the promotion. I want to make money for the boys. I want everybody to make money. And you can do it. And because what I saw, this is changing the subject. You know how you kind of change the subject.
Okay.
That I went, AEW had their first big show here at the Ocean Center, where we had done a show at the Ocean Center a few years ago, and Jim Ross Jr. got me a ticket. I'd never really never sat in the front row in a wrestling match ever, but he got me front row tickets. And it was, to me, this may sound, it was like a circus du Soleil. It was incredible. The acrobats, the this and that. They had a soft mat around the ring, which was good, because there was a lot of people falling, somersaulting on the mat and everything. Because, in the old days, that was concrete.
Right.
They didn't have a nice soft little mat.
Pads, yes.
But there was no story. There was, absolutely no story attached. And yet the guys looked good. They're a little smaller. There wasn't a lot of big guys. But yeah, the somersaults, I thought I was in Vegas. I was watching So I could see the difference when I hear people talk about the difference between now and then. I understand why people sometimes will go back to the old school wrestling. And that's what Herb Simmons does that. He does old school wrestling, one of the few promoters that will do that. And he's been doing that because Frank and him and Larry Matisak were starting up an organization. They were starting up a little wrestling organization and going, because it was just before it happened, because Frank had opened up a corporation, BAM, B-A-M, Brody Athletic Management, because he always knew that wrestling what he did in the wrestling ring, he wasn't going to be able to do forever.
Right.
So he was
Right.
looking at beyond wrestling, because as we know, the bodies break down. All the people I know from those days, it was a tough job. You get beat up, and what it is. And he was working with Herb Simmons. They were going to do shows. They had some really good people, Nord the Barbarian, Terry Gordy, because they're going to do these little shows and everybody was going to get paid, have everybody's getting paid the same, do that. And he's also, he bought a little kind of 45 acres out in the hill country in San Antonio, and it was a stream running through. And he was working with a guy at the University of Texas. And what they were going to do, he had bought a wrestling ring from Joe Blanchard, and they were going to do a skit working with the university. They were going to go to the colleges, schools, set up a ring, put Frank in the ring, and talk about the dangers, the DARE. Remember the DARE program in the schools, the dangers?
Oh, yes. Yeah.
I think the dangers of drugs that they were really pushing back in those days.
Yep.
But we know kids, you put somebody in authority talking about something like that, and they just
turn it off.
They turn it off. You put someone like Frank in that ring, in his hair wild, and talk about that. I think it's a shame it never happened, but I think it really worked. That's what he was planning. He was already set to do that. And then what he was going to do was in the school holidays, because it had a little like mobile home on this property, get some kids, the disfortunate kids that don't have the good life, that are heading maybe the wrong direction. Take a bunch of boys out there, do a little wrestling, do a little fishing, do a little something, because sometimes I think in today, if you show attention just a little bit to somebody like that, it can change their lives.
Absolutely.
Because the world has got so different that even back then you still had the kids that didn't have the advantages that a lot of the other kids have. Yeah. And so this was all what we were doing before, the tragedy hit. So it was a shame, because I think it would have really worked, and he probably could have saved quite a few of the boys.
Yeah, I'll say again, it's great. It's great technology. But in a lot of ways, it has isolated the world.
Exactly. I went to a family, kind of like his family, kind of like a reunion, Frank's family. Mm-hmm. And there was a whole table of kids.
Yes.
They weren't talking to each other. These were cousins and that had never seen each other, that a family get together. Everybody was on their phones. Yeah. It was like
different world.
See, Barbara, you're doing this, so that means laptop. This means cell phone here right now. That one.
Yeah. Now I see a lot of people just talking to their phones.
Yes.
And then they don't even have to type anymore. It's like da da da. Yeah, I know you're right. I can't even do that in my hand.
I always say. Ironically, because Barbara, I actually had to take a typing class in high school. I think it was my freshman year in high school. I did take a typing class. So an actual typing class, so I know what the home row is and all about that. And but typing on a cell phone is not very easy to do that, because I'm that one finger type of person that's pecking away on that. But like I said, audio, I have to always learn to slow my speech down, because I'll maybe a hurry, I'll say something, then I look at what I just said and it came up with something totally different. It's like going on, now I got to redo it. And yeah.
I have to check myself because sometimes I've sent things and it hasn't really made any sense. So now I have to remember to look before saying, whoa, that's not right.
Yeah. Have to spell check yourself real quick.
Spell check real quick. I know. But, this to me, there's a lot of bad, like you're talking about with our phones and everything. But for someone like me that have relatives all over the world, I get to know what my relatives are doing. I get to see the kids growing up. I get to see.
Yes.
So that's the little bit of the positive that if it's done right, it's a wonderful tool.
Yeah. No, I totally agree with what you're saying. But to go back what you said before, what a powerful way to, to have Frank inside of that professional ring, even if he's sitting on a chair or if he's walking around that ring and talking to these students about, some of the perils of peer pressure, drugs, applying yourself. There's so many different good things there because, he was also involved in an industry that you're wrestling so many times. Are you getting hurt? Yes, you're getting hurt.
Yes.
Are you getting hooked on painkillers, muscle relaxers, amphetamines to get you up in the morning to get you going, downers to put you down to sleep at night? I mean, I've been involved that industry. It just really boggled my mind because I would be at some of the different shows and I would see some of the different wrestlers. They would come in and they would open up their duffel bag and there was a small pharmacy of all the goodies that they had on top of. Okay, Dan, you're looking kind of small. We got to get you big, I mean, on top of all the good stuff that's what's get you big and buffed in the whole 9 yards. So it's easy to fall in line and get underneath the influence of some of that stuff. And then some of it is very addicting, whether it's actually addicting or you like it just, you like the fanfare from all of it,
Oh, I know. As you know, it's a entertainment, regardless of where you are in the entertainment business. It's a very dangerous thing to get in for a lot of people because, as we talked, it's so easy to go, or peer pressure sometimes too, like you said, peer pressure and let's face it, we've lost a few people too from the dangers that
was something. I mean, Eric's already heard me regale the stories, stuff like that. But I would be in high school, and I played different sports. I played football in the fall. I did wrestling during the wintertime, and then I was involved with the track and field team during the springtime. But the track coach knew that I had this conversation with him that if there happened to be a Saturday wrestling meet and there's a Saturday track meet, he was never going to see me at the track meet. So he was mad about that because I could score points in the shot put, the discus, and other types of sports there for him. But he just knew that I already knew by my sophomore year what my future was. It wasn't going to be in a team sport. It was going to be into an individual sport like amateur wrestling, that I will be able to go to college. I'll be able to pay for my college education with a full athletic scholarship. And that's really, I always tell people, you have to learn how to use this skill set to make your way. And it sounded like Frank was like a great businessman because he understood this is his tool. He's using this professional wrestling to make money, take care of the family, and to all other aspects there, what that comes with it.
Yeah, and as I said, he knew a lot of times, like he knew he'd end up back at WWE because he knew that the match everybody wanted to see was Beauty and the Beast, which was Hulk Hogan and of course Bruiser Brody. He knew that, but he knew he wanted to kind of finish Japan first because he knew WWE. He knew because I remember Vince Sr. used to call the house all the time, and this was way back, and Frank already knew that things would change. Things would change once Senior was out and Junior was in. And he knew that especially they would want him. They wanted him to lose. I'm talking about Bruiser. Bruiser would have been great. This is what they all wanted him to do. They want him to take the fall before it was time because he knows you have to, it's going to come at some point. You're going to have to take the fall. But he wanted to do it in his own way, knowing that would be the right time. Because it doesn't matter. You can take it if it's done right, no problem. But he knew if he got into WWE too early, that was not going to be, probably. You know what I mean? Especially Japan was number one. You know, Japan was number one at that particular point of time.
Japan took care of the athletes better than anybody. I mean, you were just treated very, very well in all aspects. Where it's just a whole different atmosphere overseas as opposed to being in the States.
Yeah, everything was taken care of. They were treated with respect.
Yep.
You know, I know when I went out, they took me over there after it happened. And I know that I am glad that I got to see it. I'm glad that I got to experience what he experienced, because he would always tell me, you just won't believe what it's like over there. It's just, you know, it's hard for me to.
So Sibby, I just talking about just going to Japan from a tourist type of perspective. How clean are the streets? Did you see any graffiti on the walls? Did you see how well-mannered people are? There's certain traits that I'll simply say Americans can learn a lot of little things from a country like Japan. So small, yet the people are polite.
Yes.
They go out of their way to try to speak any kind of English that they possibly can to Americans. And it's like, I always say that America can learn a lot from its counterparts at times as to maybe what not to do, especially like no graffiti, clean, being a lot more respectful. There's just a lot of good attributes from the Japanese folks.
Barbara, I'm curious, did Frank ever have any talks about negotiations with Vince?
I'm sure through different people. Yeah, he knew that was going to be his last thing, his last hurrah, kind of. You know, as he was getting out of wrestling, he knew that. He talked about that, Hogan and him, and with the WWE, that it would come eventually.
He pretty much knew that would happen.
Yeah. He was keeping that for kind of probably the last hurrah, you know, to do that, and then he knew that he would have to put him over. There wasn't absolutely nothing, but he didn't want to do that until Japan was near enough finished. Because back then, they were the Japanese, because Stan and you know, Frank was starting to get older too at this stage.
Right.
So he knew, and they were already bringing in the Road Warriors. The Road Warriors were going to be the next tag team. You know what I mean? After, you know, Bruiser and Stan. But it's so weird. The Japanese still contact me. I've just been a couple of times. They still contact me because they're still doing merchandise of Bruiser and Stan over there. They've got some big show coming up this year. Oh, wow. And they wanted permission to do some, you know, some T-shirts and some other merchandise and that. So I feel that he is still very popular in Japan as well.
That is one of those countries that they honor their athletes, especially as they get older. They really they revere and they honor them, and it's I mean, you look at like what they've done for like Antonio Inoki and that. I mean, they've had great retirement matches for him. I always thought the most comical aspect is the fact that he slaps people and people line up to get cuffed by him. Like, well, that's good for you. I'm trying to keep what marbles I still have left in my hand after being involved in that industry.
I know.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Barbara.
No, you go ahead.
I was going to say, I want to go back to the conversation about the cell phones again, but from the perspective, I'll ask you about Dark Side of the Ring later, but had you had a cell phone back then, what was it like that night getting the call about what happened to Frank in Puerto Rico? And from what I'm picking up, it doesn't sound like you really knew what happened until you arrived there.
No, well, as Dan probably knows, you get these women trying to cause trouble, calling the wife, doing, you know what I mean? Just the little fans. They're fans, but, you know, you're in the public eye. You have other things that go on in the public eye. So this woman, women were always calling, you know. In the finish, I would just say, oh, you know, is Bruiser there? Oh, yeah, hang on, let me go get him. boom. Hey, you play. You know what I mean? Instead
Right.
of getting upset, hey, yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Probably wouldn't call. Well, this night, this woman started calling and I had talked to Frank in the afternoon. We were set up a meeting on the Monday. We were doing something on the Monday. This was the Saturday night. We had talked in the afternoon. I knew everything was fine. And we had a rule. I've talked to you. The phone rings, it's not going to be me. So just don't answer the phone. You know what I mean? We've
Right.
talked. We're going to be talking on Monday. That's it. Because otherwise, and this was before we didn't even have a answering machine. When Frank got home, there was no answering machines. There was no picking up the phone. It was chill. So it started ringing. It was like about 11 or 12 o'clock, somewhere in there. The phone started ringing. I didn't answer it. Rang. Didn't answer it. Well, this is now 2 o'clock. I said, I'm just going to pick up the phone and give them I picked up the phone and she said, this is Nancy. It was Carlos Cologne's wife. I think you better come to Puerto Rico. She didn't say, just said it was Nancy at that time. You better come to Puerto Rico. I just think you better come. Oh, sure. Okay, bye. It was like, oh, someone's really trying to cause trouble. And then I went. And it was like, okay, I think I better call the hotel. On that one, you know how sometimes little voices?
Yeah.
Okay, this is a little weird, something's going on. Why should somebody call and want me to go to Puerto Rico? Go to Puerto Rico. I'd be divorced, somebody giving me a fake, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I called the hotel because I knew where we were staying because we just talked that day. And the girl put me through to Dutch Mantel's room. Well, Dutch told me, I asked him, I said, what's going on? He said, well, he didn't say what it was. He said, well, there's been an accident. Oh, can you tell me more? No, there's been an accident. Okay. You think I should come to Puerto Rico? Well, maybe you should. Okay. Of course. Shh. So I thought. Then the lady called back, or I called the lady, or no, something. She called back again. And I had already found out that there had been some sort of accident. Nobody went into exactly what happened or anything. And so I talked to her. That's when she said that she was Carlos Cologne's wife. She didn't say that the first time round because I really wasn't listening, some woman on the phone.
Right.
So I said, well, I know Frank didn't like hospitals. And I know he'd want me and my son, if there's anything at all going on, maybe I better go there. So, this is getting on now to 3 o'clock, 3:30. I called up the airlines. There was a flight leaving like 6:30 in the morning. So I thought, I don't even know how I'm going to book that. I need to go to the airport, get a ticket. I called my neighbor. She said, why don't you leave Jeff here with me? I said, no, we're kind of a partnership, We'll be okay. Jeff was in his pajamas. I had a couple of things in a bag. They took me to the airport, and I was so relieved. This was when Frank knew a lot of the people in the airline because he was always there at the airport. I had found a credit card. We didn't even use credit cards back in that day, but I knew that Frank had one that had never been used, and I said, I hope I can find it. We didn't even have credit cards. Boy, we were old-fashioned. So it was like, don't want to spend no extra money, So I thought, where would he hide it? Thank you. I found the credit card. That's all I had. Didn't really have much money. I had the credit card, got to the airport, and It was a guy that knew Frank was working Braniff. That was before it went out of business. I went up there and explained. He gave me a cheap ticket, took the credit card, never been used, but took the credit card, gave me my ticket, got on sometimes things have a way. And all negatives, there's a positive somewhere. Sometimes it takes a while to find it, but there's always, no matter how bad, just look for that little teeny positive in all the bad. So got on a plane, got to the airport. I'd already been in contact with Nancy, and she said, I told her my airline ticket. So she said, I'll be at the airport to pick you up. I mean, I felt quite confident then. So, especially after talking to Dutch. So I get to the airport, didn't know what had happened. All I knew, there was an accident. There was no explanation of anything. So I arrive in Puerto Rico, trying to keep an eye on Jeff, kids. He's over there getting on scales, waiting for somebody to come, because I didn't know who was going to pick me up. Then I look up. I see Abby running, Abby walking really fast.
Yeah, I was saying, Abby and Ron, those two don't go together there.
No, he saw me, and he came over. I think he hugged me, and I said, what's going on? He said, he was the one that told me that Frank had died. I'm standing there in the airport, and Abby tells me that Frank had passed. And then, of course, he's running to get a flight because he's getting out of Puerto Rico. He was, and Abby was moving, which is, as you know, he doesn't move. This was back. So I'm standing there by myself, and Abby had just told me that Frank had died. Still didn't know exactly what had happened or anything, that he'd passed. I guess then you go into shock.
Yeah.
You just kind of got
Well, it's just a combination of shock, denial. It can't be. You just spoke to him. I mean,
yeah,
so
it's like you don't know. Your mind just goes into this really weird, So I get Jeff standing there, and then Nancy comes. She had her daughter with her. So, and this is another bizarre thing, because here I'm going, what's going on? Still didn't know what happened. And she takes me, I think they were renovating their house and they were living in some condo. We go to the condo. I can't believe I did this. Carlito, I think is his name, Carlito.
Yeah. You talking about Cologne's son?
Yes. Yeah. He's in a basketball court playing basketball with a bunch of guys. Jeff loves basketball. He goes over, he just goes in and starts playing basketball. She brought him over, introduced, and he asked him, do you want to come play basketball? See, Jeff doesn't really know anything that's going on right now. Next second I see, he's playing basketball, having a great time. Okay. And next thing I said, well, I can't just leave him. She said, he'll be fine. I'll make sure he's looked after. I have to take you to the morgue. Okay. So she takes me to the, so I could identify the body. So it was like, and she was Canadian. So she could, you know what I mean? Because everything over there was in Spanish or Puerto Rican. So I didn't know the language. So she was interpreted everything for me because I couldn't understand. And so, she takes me in there. I have to identify the body. The body was like, and it was after a Saturday night. Puerto Rico, they've told me, that morgue was lined up. That was full of bodies after a Saturday night in Puerto Rico. And it was like, I don't know, in the old days, when you had a baby, they would bring the baby up to the front. There'd be the babies there. When you went to see someone that had a baby, then they'd bring the little basket up and you'd be able to look at the baby. Well, it's like that. They went and got the gurney and brought him up to this window, and I had to identify him. And then, I can talk about it now. And then I had to sign papers. Well, I wasn't going to sign papers because they wanted me to sign my maiden name. And I'm saying, I'm Goodish. You can't take my name away from me right now. I can't, I'm not signing, my maiden name. I guess that's part of the Puerto Rican culture, So it was like, no, I had to, And then, of course, I forget where we went and picked up Jeff, and they took me to a hotel. I remember that. I, remember different little things. And it was like, gave me Frank's bag, and it's like, whoa. Had to call a few people because I wanted to call his parents before it hit the news. I called Stan. I called Larry and Herb, the people that I knew that needed to be told. But the parents were the first one. That was the worst call I had to make because I knew it would hit the news over here at some point. And I thought, I don't want his parents looking at the news and here's their son. And a couple of the people wanted to come down to Puerto Rico. And I said, I don't know what kind of situation this is. I still hadn't known the full story at this stage. All I know was he's dead. I said, I don't know what it's all about. Then, of course, I was really, because it went from there and then, the whole story that just went on and on and on, and had a little, this is terrible. I mean, as you said, there's always that one little thing when I had to pick up Hal, because I was going to just cremate him. I thought, I can't bring him home in a plane. He wouldn't want that. And it's funny, sometimes you remember things, because when I was in that hotel, just kind of trying to figure out what the blazes was going on.
Right.
And it was, sometimes, and I believe sometimes in this too, it was like he was standing in front of me telling me what to do. Sometimes they say you can visualize. And it was like, here he is, I'm sitting there just, and here he's telling me, and he was kind of saying, cremate me and bring me home just normal. It'll be easy on you. That's what I always want to do, be easy. And I went, yeah, that's probably the best, we'd talked about it, but yeah, then I can keep him with me and we can go home together on the plane. That was when you could probably take him on the plane. You probably can't now with everything going on.
Right.
So I had a service down there. I don't know, you do things and you don't even know why you did them. So I did have a service, and because I was just trying to think, I did have a service down there. And I mean, I have to say, no matter what happened, the Puerto Rican family that I was around were very nice. I have nothing against. And when I got to the what do you call that? What is it? The funeral home, I guess you would call it. There was a big banner on the door, and I don't know why I did this, but I guess that he had a viewing, and I don't even know how that happened, but that's okay. It was fine. There was a big banner on the funeral home, and it said, "Do not blame the people of Puerto Rico for the actions of one man." So.
Wow.
And they were lined up. The people were lined up to give their respects to him. So yeah, and then we came home and we had a little service for his people. And I did spend a day with the district attorney too. But so, excuse me, what happened afterwards with the trial and everything, it wasn't a surprise. I was kind of, because of, nobody knew. I mean, nobody knew when the trial was, and everybody like Dutch and Tony Atlas, and all the ones that were there, they got their subpoenas after the trial had already been done.
Rigged.
Oh, yeah, I know.
When was the first time, and do you remember who was the first one to actually tell you what happened?
I think it had to be. I think it must have been Nancy. Nancy must have sat down and said, but then of course I talked to Dutch and I think it was, I spent half a day with the doctor. I went to the doctor that lost him. he wanted to see me. So I went to the hospital and talked to the doctor, and the doctor went through everything, what had happened. But the time that he got him, he had lost so much blood that he said, I tried to save him, but I couldn't save him. So the doctor was very apologetic, saying I tried, but by the time he came to me, it was just too late to that. So yeah, that was, as I said, and I stayed there. I didn't want to stay in Puerto Rico, but what I did, because I knew if I came back to the States and I did not have a death certificate, I would be screwed. I wouldn't have been able to do anything. And who knows how long it would have taken to try get one sent to me. So I kind of had to hang out for a few extra days so that when I left, I had all the paperwork, in my hand. So even though I was kind of in shock, at least I did do a lot of things right, to do that.
Coming at you at once.
Just coming boom, boom, boom. And then, of course, there were the people that were there, but they didn't really talk because a lot of them left. A lot of them had to leave. Well, they were leaving because they were worried. And I'm sure you've seen something on the people talking, the people that were there, like Tony Atlas and Dr. Powell, and the people that actually were in, because I think that's part of what the Dark Side of the Ring brought in. They were telling the stories, and with Tony. And it's like I said, I watched that. I wasn't sure whether I was going to do that dark side, but I think they did okay. A little bit of embellishment, but we're dealing with wrestlers. There's going to be a very little bit of embellishment on some of the things I knew. It was pretty much good, but yeah. Hey, you got to be embellished a little bit. That's part of the culture.
I'm curious, Barbara, was there ever any attempts to reopen that case by anybody to get justice for what happened to Frank? There was nothing you could do, was there?
Tony wanted me to open it. He still, last time I saw him, which I'm not sure whether he's going to be in St. Louis or not, but last time I saw him, he was here in daytime, another show, the AEW show, if I remember, one of the shows. Somebody put a show on here, and he was there, but he took my ear off. He wanted me to do something. This is 35, 30, years that, what can I do? That would just, some things in life, it's like the Serenity poem. You change the things you can, but you've got to accept the things you can't change. And sometimes things like that, when it comes like that, you can't change. They did it. They did the trial without anybody knowing. They've already done it all. What could I do? Especially where it happened, and I'm over here. And sometimes it's better just to get on with my life and try to make something. And still remember Frank.
Yeah, I want to say, I just admire you so much for keeping his memory alive all these years, still going and talking to the fans and everything is a very beautiful thing. And speaking of which, it sounds like you got several events coming up where people can come and meet you. Can you tell us what all you have scheduled?
Oh, yeah, and Dan knows this one too, because he's got this one, St. Louis. Where is it? St. Louis, the 17th and 18th of May. Big old SICW Fan Fest
with Herb. Yeah, as soon as you brought up Herb's name there, I'm thinking, I'm just wondering if I'd be seeing you at this upcoming. So I'll definitely be looking for you.
Yes, but we'll make sure that we get together.
Yes.
At the Aviator Hotel and Suites in St. Louis, and the people that they've got there. Hey, we've got Dan right there. He's going to be there. And Brian Blair, Dr. D, Abby's going to be there. Bill Apter, he's going to do his one-man show on the 17th.
What a character Bill Apter is, just period.
Yeah, I've seen the show. I'm going to make sure I'm there at Bill's show on. He's doing it on Friday night. It's going to be a hoot.
Yeah, I always kid Bill, and I tell him, Bill, I said, you've done so many different impersonations. You're going to sooner or later, you'll get to this age, and when dementia, Alzheimer's, all that stuff kind of sets in. I've just wondered what character will you be, or each time that you bump your head, will you turn into a new character?
Yeah, he's good.
Bill.
I know. I'm so looking forward to him. Then there's Greg Gagne. He's going to be there, and the Rock and Roll Express, and James Beard, and I'm actually bringing Frank's sister. His older sister Gail, is going to come this year with me. So that should be. She took her to Vegas, and I've taken her to Waterloo, which is another good Hall of Fame.
Yes.
And then, like I said, she hasn't been to the St. Louis, so I know she's going to really enjoy the St. Louis one because it's great. And Herb, I love Herb. He's done everything. And like I said, we always have a Bruiser Brody memorial show, a wrestling match that somebody gets. I have to give the big cup out, the Bruiser Brody Cup, every year to the winner of the wrestling show.
Oh.
Well, Barbara, I appreciate you coming on so much. It has been an honor to sit down and talk with you. And again, thank you for everything you continue to do. I'm curious about the book behind your shoulder. Could you tell me about that?
Yeah, this is what, can you see?
Yeah.
This is what I wrote with Herb Simmons and me and Larry Matisak. It was the authors were Larry Matisak and myself, because they came to me. I've had several people that had wanted to write a book when I didn't know them. And I know sometimes with books, there's a lot of untruths in a lot of books, So when Larry came to me and said, I said, I can't write a book. What are you talking about? He said, I'll do the wrestling part. You do the personal part. And we'll do it as the, part and part.
Yeah. Collaboration there. Yes.
And I know Larry was probably one of the most honest people I have ever met. So I knew that he would do a great job. And I knew that my part would be the total truth too, that there was nothing. And you know something? When you tell the truth, you don't have to worry about telling the story over and over. It never changes because it's the truth.
Gee, so Barbara, I think our politicians could learn something from what you just said right there. If they just told the truth. Oh my!
And then I don't know. You've seen this, the Power Town.
Oh no!
The Power Town. This is what they did. They did the Power Town. I mean, it's a hell of. This is what they did. A whole series. Oops! I shifted. Did I? But they did. It might be hard to see in the thing.
Yeah, no,
wow. Now, is this the one that Magnum TA and Greg Gagne put together?
Magnum, because there was 6 of them. There was Kerry Von Erich, Stan Henson, Bruiser Brody, Vern Gagne, Luthez, and Magnum. Yeah, that was the 6 of them. The first thing that they came out with. Wow. So you should get. Have they got you signed up yet?
Listen, I talked to them about it.
Yeah, I've got a couple of different. Contracts. I just haven't gotten around to yet. I still live a crazy life in different ways, because I always say I'm still involved in the professional wrestling, but I'm still involved in amateur wrestling. Yeah. I'm still involved in mixed martial arts, MMA, and so it's just when I can find time enough to do all. I really enjoy like today's interview, just to be able to speak to you from the wife's perspective, and from the things that you've had to see. You really portrayed it perfectly. It's for what.
Yeah, well, I had a really great visit. I went up to Jacksonville last week or something, and spent some time with 2 good friends, Dottie Curtis and Charlie Thays.
Oh wow! Now it's Charlie.
That's Lou Thayer's widow.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh wow!
Yeah. Now I met Charlie a couple different times. I think in Japan when I was over there. Lou would be over there, and I was working for that UWFI organization. So yeah, Billy Robinson at the same time. So it was like just some.
Yeah. So it was really nice. I mean, the 3 of us just like you said. I'm sure with your wife too, talking about how we the wives have survived. Yeah. The wrestling, and it just. As I said, I just think it takes a special person.
Definitely does.
You
Yeah, no,
know.
it is. I mean, she would be like, you just go do your man thing, your boy thing right there. Whatever it is, you just do your thing, come and I'll see you afterwards. But she would cherry pick some of the nicer trips.
Ah.
I go, I can't blame her that. I know us. She goes, but are you going to come watch me wrestle? No. I'm going to go see some sights and stuff like that. Yeah.
You see, but that's great, as I said, because
Yeah.
it is a hard life, and the other thing, one quick thing is my son has never really wanted to talk about it. I guess it was partly blamed wrestling, but with the dark side of the ring, that's the first time he's ever did anything that talked, because the guys that do that whole thing, they're both young, and I think he responded to the youth of them interviewing me, because we went to Austin where Jeff lives, and I went there and we did the show from Austin, and it was funny. He was just sitting there and I did my interview, and they turned around and said, well, Jeff, you want to say a few words? Well, and then they went and put the microphone. It was like, wow, okay. But the one thing that got me, because I think is they asked him kind of in a way, what stories do you have, about your dad?
Mhm.
And this isn't the exact way he said it, but it was like, everybody else has stories but me. And it was kind of like, which is true.
Yeah.
He has all these stories on his dad, and now he doesn't have the stories
Sure.
that everybody has. So, but just for him to be out there, and now, well, he's 43 now, so he's getting to be a little bit, he's beginning to realize who his dad is. So he's starting to. I would like to take him to one of these fan fests. So we'll see.
I think that would be awesome.
Yeah, I think it would be really good for him.
Does he enjoy hearing the stories about his dad?
I think so. Yeah, just different stories. But then so many people have so many great stories.
Right.
That realize that this is who your dad was. This is who your dad is. Just like the show and tell with your son saying, "This is my dad."
Yeah. Well, again, this, yeah. You really should bring him along. I think he would really enjoy that. It is just, I think, just a part of just kind of like going through a scrapbook or watching those old 8mm videotapes, stuff like that you do pull out every once in a great while.
I know his prime possession of his dad's is his dad's Washington Redskins helmet, football helmet that he got. Well, that was a little while before the wrestling, but he's got a little bit of the wrestling stuff in that. I think he's getting ready. Well, I know he'll probably end up selling some of it eventually.
Yeah.
But yeah, I said it's a crazy business.
Yes, it is.
But I had just had a little text from Herb, and he was saying, don't forget to mention the Bruiser Brody Memorial. And I said, that is what part of this conversation is going to be back. And Dan's going to be there. You get in Friday?
Oh, yeah. I'll be there sometime on that, either Thursday night or the Friday, that early in the morning. I had to look at, as I always refer to it, I work out of a planner, or what I refer to as my portable brain, because do I remember it all? No.
Oh, I know. I have to write everything down now.
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, it should be a great weekend. Because
I'm looking forward to it.
The people that are going to be there, and it's going to be, and Herb always puts on such a good show. Yeah. In fact, he's been in the promoting business for over 40 years. He's and like I said, he's one of the few old school wrestling promoters that I go a couple of times. I've been to his show with the Bruiser Brody Memorial. It hasn't been the Fan Fest. It's been like in a little place. He puts me to work. He makes me do something.
Now, that's a good promoter.
Oh, my gosh. I have thrown garbage bins into the ring. I have slapped people. It was so terrible. I said, I cannot slap. And I'd go, no, you got to go like this. Yeah. I can't do that.
Lay it in there.
And I guess in the moment of the time, I actually got a sound. Because I think you get up to the adrenaline or something. And they said, you did it right. Even the one I did, he said, thank goodness. I was so afraid it was going to be so terrible that it wasn't even going to look good. And then another time, someone had long hair, and I had to pull the hair over the top rope. So I always get worried when I go that I never know why the herb is going to get me to go. And of course, the people, what do you think the people do? They start chanting.
They love it. They love it.
Yeah, it's either Brody, 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 or they chant that. What was it? Huss, 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 that it used to say. And it's like, that's what Herb says. You watch them chant. And sure enough, as soon as they do something, it's like, well, why do you do this? So it's so I've been kind of not involved, but kind of, he puts me to work sometimes.
Gives you, yeah, no, it's a feel good moment is what that is.
It is a feel good moment because then the people are just, it's a spot.
Yeah. That's what life's all about, making some good memories and, and trying to hold on to those memories. So,
and that's why I always tell these people too, I said, if ever you get any opportunities to do anything, do it because they might not ever come again.
Yeah.
Like living in different countries or living that, because you can always go back to what you want to do, but have an experience while you're still young and healthy enough.
Yep. Don't live it through just the internet. Actually, physically go there, see it, and experience it. Yes.
Go there and experience it.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Well, I'm going to wrap it up for today. Barbara, I appreciate you so much for coming on. I definitely enjoyed this.
Barbara, I really enjoyed it a great deal. You again, it's kind of like you gave me a little bit more of the insight of behind the scenes of what my better half has had to endure, because I simply know it's not been easy for her at all.
Yeah, because and a lot of the things we take care of, and you don't even know.
Yeah,
we just take care of it ourselves.
Yeah,
So. No, I hope maybe I'll get to meet her one day. We'll have a lot to talk about.
Been a real pleasure just to be able to chat with you, and I look forward to seeing you at the Herb Simmons show there coming on up. So again,
17th, 17th, 18th of May, Aviator Hotels, St. Louis. Anyone that's watching this, you have to come down.
See, you did it like a perfect promoter. I give you that, but stars. You got the stars across the board.
Love it.